Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. There is loads of motorsport to talk about this weekend, but first and foremost, really awful, horrible news, actually, Tiff. Sad that we've lost Craig Breen, I never met him, but I've read lots of things about him online. He just seemed like a super, super nice guy in the world of rallying.
Absolutely. I mean, I was in the middle of a live, not live, but an interview podcasty thing, but I was just looking at the tweets coming through and saw that. I was in tears. I had to stop the interview. I mean, because Craig was, and it just happens, the nicest guys. We always say this joke, but I mean, he had such a passion. I actually met him at Goodwood last year. We covered a Goodwood racing because he was doing the Cortina race, which I did, which we'll come to later. But and he just loved it. He couldn't believe he was living the life he was living. Every time you saw him at the end of stages, we had a good time. Oh, he was in tears early on, but he used to get good results. But he's lived through so much trauma and tragedy. Because, of course, what was it, 2010, 13 years ago, he sadly had an accident on the Targa Florio rally where his co-driver was killed. That was his best mate, his schoolmate, Gareth Roberts. And he always carried his name on the side of the car throughout his rally. So he lived through, I can't be anything worse to be a driver, to have an accident that kills your co-driver and you're fired. And so he had that. And he was such a talent as well, because he did karting early on, but then he started doing, it was the Fiesta Cup or something. He won the Fiesta Cup, and that got him into Ford, who helped him up, and that got him associated with Malcolm Wilson, up with the other Ford thing up in Humberside, not Humberside, where are they? Right up north somewhere. So he started, doing a lot of Ford stuff. He was driving a Ford, but he had the accident with Gareth. That same year, he actually went on to win the Intercontinental Rally Championship.
God, that's some tribute, isn't it?
I know,
wow.
I know. And he was just, then of course, with tears when he won it. And he was just such an emotion, just a love, just couldn't believe he was doing it.
You could tell in his voice that he's a nice guy. I watched some of his interviews and stuff, and he just seems like a super nice guy. Yeah. And certainly all the tributes. It's easy to say when someone dies. It's easy to say, "Oh, they were a nice guy," or "They're really nice."
No. But in this case,
genuinely,
absolutely nothing. And then after winning that Ford Championship, he got a World Rally deal with Peugeot first. That's a European Championship. So he got into Peugeot, and Citroën gave him. He was always a sort of temporary drive. He was always like the extra that would do half the rallies. And we did 3 years with Citroën, and had his first podium in Finland when he got third place. Then he came second in Sweden. So he had these moments, but he couldn't get the permanent drive, and spent 3 years with Hyundai from 2019 to 21. Again, Hyundai now. Again, he was just the extra driver, the third driver that didn't do all the rallies, and he came second in Estonia, I think it was. So he was always trying this pace. He did have a few shunts, to be fair, and that was always his over enthusiasm. But still, he finally got that the M Sport, the factory drive last year with a 2-year contract. It was supposed to be with Ford, back with Malcolm Wilson, back when it all began. But although he came second in Monaco, third in Monaco, I think it was, it didn't work out last year. The car wasn't good. So, of course, that made Craig go more and more on the limit to try and wring the best out of it. And so he had quite a few shunts last year. And then I think Ford, Malcolm Wilson, they wanted Octanac, an established world champion superstar that was becoming available because he left Hyundai. So, they dropped Craig. And so he was out of a drive again. I think he finally got a full-time drive at Ford. Then he picked up back to Hyundai. They knew what he's like and got him a part-time drive this year. And then, of course, he had this amazing rally when he came second in Sweden. And, he was leading the rally at one stage. And this was his first rally of the year. He hadn't done the other rallies. So, he finally thought, and he was just, the interview which everyone retweeted of him when he won a stage, and he was leading the rally. And he's just a smile on his face. And, of course, this was to be a second rally out in, where are this weekend? Corsica, isn't it? Croatia.
Yeah.
And he had this shunt, and I mean, the worry is, I mean, they're going to start talking about, is this the Group B moment for modern rallying after, Toivonen was killed and they all thought Group B cars were going too fast. And I've said this with you on podcasts that I think the modern rally cars are too quick. And it's going to have to be a big question to be asked, I mean, obviously nobody knows the circumstance. Obviously, it was a big speed and he hit the pole on the driver's side, and that was big enough damage to kill him.
100 miles an hour into a pole or a tree. They're not going to be. So they are so fast, these cars now. Hyundai are going to do a tribute this weekend, a tribute livery, as you'd imagine.
Well, yes,
to him. I guess they all will. I hope they all.
Well, the
will
whole rally family. Can you imagine? They're all having to gather together, to do a world championship event under this.
I feel sad thinking about
cloud.
it. It's just it's awful. I can't imagine his family, and like you said, living through that when your best mate dies and you're you're not the cause of it, but you're the driver of the car. It's
well, he obviously felt responsible,
Of course.
Yeah, a lovely, lovely guy. So much sympathy for his family. I mean, his parents have lived through it all, and his family and everything else. But really hit me, and it's one of the ones I haven't been hit that badly by fatality in motorsport for so long, because he was someone that loved, and was so amazed that he felt so lucky. He was so grateful he had this opportunity to drive a rally car. Anyway, he's gone sadly, and as I said, I saw him at Goodwood last year, and a lot of people would talk about it at Goodwood this weekend when the members meeting, where I, as you managed to tweet, a lot of started from the back of the grid in the slowest Cortina I've ever had. But I mean, that's what Goodwood was about. The Goodwood, the organisers, the promoters, the Duke's team, they select drivers for celebrity drivers, so we all get given a car that we've no idea how good or bad it will be. We accept that's all the beauty of being, lucky enough to be invited to race at Goodwood. But
surely you can ask for a better car because they know which are the best cars.
Well, they probably do, and But I think Jerry Bailey's a local. I didn't know him before, but he lives in Salisbury, so he's a local. Who runs a garage and a farm and stuff in Salisbury. So they probably thought, Salisbury Tiff, Salisbury Jerry Bailey. We'll put the Salisbury boys together, and he's a lovely man. We had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I had a good first few laps. I overtook about 5 cars from the back of the grid. And then
I was watching, of course, and I did watch you make your way up because I knew it was a lot slower. It was about 9 or 10 miles an hour slower. You could actually hear the difference when you were going down the straight. All the lead cars would go down the straight, and then you were going. But I watched it. I mean, it was brilliant. The hustle you were doing, and
it's going
so close to the other cars and stuff. And I was just had a big smile on my face. It was great to watch. It was a shame to see the car slipping back down.
It all left him. I managed to get the slowest lap of the race. Still was that slow.
I think the frustrating thing is that a lot of people thought it was you. The commentators were even saying, shows how good the field is because even Tiff Needell can't keep up with them. And I'm thinking, well, actually,
we beat Jocko Mass. We finished from 28th on the grid. We finished 22nd.
Yeah, but
the other one, half of the retard.
Because he had problems with his car, though, isn't it?
Jochen finished. He finished 23rd. Jochen Mass, and that means about 5 cars retired. So we overtook 5 retirees and Jochen Mass's car. It was one of my little battle early on. I was battling with Jochen on those opening laps. But I mean, Mando, you said, it's still a brilliant one. There was some touring car race that was amazing. There was a huge shunt at the end of that. Were you still there at the end of the day? I didn't see that. I've seen it on Twitter today. One of the huge old Camaros had a big shunt at Woodcote Corner. He'd just taken the lead, but outbraked himself. But yeah, it was a wonderful weekend at Goodwood, but overshadowed by everyone. So many people talking about the loss of Craig. But there we go. So
but we always say as well. You and I always say in motor racing, if anything happens, the show must go on. And I'm sure Craig's family would want. Of course, we all remember him, and it's great. But the show must go on. If anything ever happened to me, you hear it now. I've told you this many times. When we're filming, when racing Caterhams. Carry on, do it with a big smile on your face. And if you remember me over a pint, great. But the show must go on. But Goodwood was amazing, and I was delighted to watch you race. Well,
my Leicester Storm was there. They had an amazing GT1. But you see that? They had about 20 cars. They had everything: Vipers, Ferraris, Chevrolets, Leicester Storms. They went round on the Saturday night to the half of the dark, in the dusk. Apparently, people that were there said it was amazing.
Was your name still on the window, on the door?
No, because that wasn't my car. It was a later car. It was the Bobby Woodman and others. It wasn't the earliest cars. But as having done my magnificent race to finish a wonderful 22nd, I headed home on Sunday afternoon to try and catch up with the global motorsport that's been going on. There was so much going on last weekend. And in the afternoon on Sunday, I caught up with the World Endurance Championship from Portimao in Portugal. Toyota's still winning, I'm afraid. The Ferraris are snapping at their heels. Well, not quite their heels yet. They're sort of tailing behind them. Another win for Toyota. down in Portimao World Championship. The other Toyota, they finished ninth in the end. And this is some of this modern motorsport that we have to moving on with. Their torque sensor on the drive shaft, which is FIA, they don't make the part, or someone makes the part for all. They've had them for 2 years already. It's like now, instead of sort of pre-race scrutineering or post-race scrutineering, you now have scrutineering during the race. Because all these cars have to send all the what's going on. Like the Formula E's, they suddenly have a spike in the batch, don't they, and get disqualified because they over boost. And anyway, the torque sensor on one of the Toyotas stopped working. And so they had to pit and change the whole drive. I think they changed the whole corner of the car in about 11 minutes to get the car back out again. It's a tricky one, that, because the car's not illegal, but it has to be seen whilst it's racing. So the other Toyota still won it. Ferrari was second, Porsche third. They were the fastest of the Le Mans Daytona hybrids. Of course.
How does this handicap work, though, Tiff?
Well, balance the power between the two. I don't know. It's just all about torque and aero and drag and downforce. They actually check how much downforce you've got in a different. They all go to a wind tunnel. The cars, they have to check what downforce you're all getting.
So if it was like Formula One, and it was just a case of here's the regulations, you can have this engine, this downforce, this clearance. Who would be the best manufacturer? Would it still be Toyota?
No idea. I mean, they would be at the moment because they're ahead of the game. But it's such a complicated set of rules.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're working it all out. But so yeah, Ferrari was second, Porsche third, Cadillac were fourth. There's 4 manufacturers. In fact, there's 5 manufacturers in the top 5 because Peugeot were fifth.
Brilliant.
In there, and I still say it doesn't work without a rear wing. I still tell Peugeot it'll probably be brilliant at Le Mans with a long straights. Maybe they built it only for Le Mans, but the Peugeot, they had the embarrassment of one of the cars at the start of the pit lane because I think they had a gearbox problem or some problem. I don't know what the problem was. But it was a good run at Portimao. But whilst the hybrid class is gathering momentum, they will get closer and closer. The LMP2s that have been racing now for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, but are beginning to come to the end. I think there'll only be probably hypercars and GTs in a couple of years' time. But they had 9 cars on the lead lap after the 6-hour race. It's incredible. The reliability now is the speed of all the drivers. But it was great. It was a United Autosport 1-2. They came across the line in formation at half a second apart. And that's the British team. Well, Zach Brown owns the team, was involved with it. Richard Dean runs it up in Leeds somewhere, I think. So it's really good. Congratulations, United Autosports fended off all the other LMP2 teams. GTM, again, fantastic. There were 5 cars on the lead lap. A real battle there. The Corvette just held off the leading Ferrari by 0.26 of a second after 6 hours racing. So it was a cracking good GTE race. In fact, one of the drivers of the second place Ferrari was this French, very, very, very highly rated French girl, 22-year-old Lilou Wadou. Wadoux, but probably spelled Wadou. She seems a really quick girl. So she came second part of the Ferrari team. And third overall, I mean, there must have been about 10, 15, 20 cars in the class, was the Iron Dames. They keep on, these 3 women.
Yeah, they do.
They came third in their Porsche, right on the pace. They're a cracking 3-woman team that have been doing sensationally. So the women are coming. There you are for the girls' support. There you go. You get GTE at least.
And a good talking point, or not a good talking point, an incredible talking point about Portimao was practice. Did you see the practice sessions? For those who didn't see it,
yeah, the crash.
Yeah, it was just incredible. Luckily, there was no.
It was a support race? I think it was the Porsche Super Cup support race for locals.
Yeah, and so if you didn't see it, Porsche their brakes went because you got quite a big gravel track, but it went sort of skipped over the gravel and it ended up over the fence in the grandstand, upside down on the grandstand. So if there
right way up.
If
it was sat looking at the track. It landed on. It must have landed on 15 seats.
Yeah.
I mean, if that grandstand had been full, I mean, it would have been almost as bad as talking about Le Mans in 1955. It would have been that big a disaster to motorsport.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of these straight ends, they don't have any stands sort of straight ahead on the end very fast, or that's a long way away. But Mow the gravel. It is such a quick, 200 mile an hour they're coming down there.
Maybe it's just a freak accident. I don't know.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of different ways of tyre walls, because I often watch Sebring, which is a really dangerous track in America, and even COTA. They seem to have very loose piled tyres, taller, whereas we in Europe seem to bind them together with this sort of conveyor belt across the front of them. And it seems a lot if you go in them really quick, you sort of hit the front of them, then it flips you over them. Whereas, and I saw a Cota at the end of that huge long main straight with brake failure. He just piled with this stack of tyres, and it sort of caught him. But these ones, it sent him bounce over the tyre wall, which then, when you think about Zhao at Silverstone, when they said the gap was too narrow because he hit the tyres over the tyres, hit the fence, and dropped into that narrow gap. If you look at the Estoril, Portimao, the gap was quite large, so it gave them room for the car to get higher in the air before it hit the top of the fencing. I think the fencing went down as well. I mean, it's just, you don't bear to think about it.
No, you don't.
I mean, it's a bit like rallying, you try to look away, don't you? I mean, we saw Tanak, you see that crash from last year, sixth gear, when he veered off course at over 120 miles an hour, when he went to the tops of little trees that sort of brought him down softly. And we always think, we got away with that one. And, they got away with it.
We've all got away with them, but my goodness, that was a get out of jail card, that one.
Yeah. Anyway, so World Endurance Drive Champion, not exciting at the top, not dicey, but great racing all the way through the field. And the Ferraris hopefully are coming, getting closer.
Well, not far off, second place.
No, but over sports cars continue. We have to go back to America now, head for America, Long Beach, the IMSA sports cars, which they don't have a choice. They're only the LMHDs, LMDHs. I always get it wrong way around. LMDHs, LMHs, but they call them. I forgot they call LMP1s over there, or whatever they call. I've lost touch now with what they all call these cars. Anyway, it saw the first win for Porsche. So the Porsche 963. Ever since, I don't know when the last Porsche 962 won, but it must have been in about 1990 or something. So it's the first win for the new customer. You can go out and buy your Porsche 963. And the Brit Nick Tandy was one of the winning drivers, won Le Mans with Porsche. Nick's always a great driver, who's part of the French Mathieu Jaminet. So take the first win for Porsche, take the round. Ricky Taylor was actually, the Acura was dominating. Ricky Taylor and his co-driver Felipe Albuquerque were dominating the race from pole. They had a horrendous pit stop. I haven't read the full thing. Albuquerque, apparently, I should read it again, but he had a radio communication. And they said he had to plug the radio in to talk and then pull it out to listen to the speakers in the car. I've never heard. That's what? I know. I wanted to read it.
That?
I don't know. Because if you're driving around Long Beach, there's not many places to have a breather and plug in and pull it. But you can't hear a speaker. I'm not sure what they meant, to be honest. You can't take two hands off a steering wheel of a racing car. You don't need one. If it was a pull plug on.
But how are you going to plug it back in? You got to hold it to plug it back in.
Anyway, when he got to the pit stop, the wire got caught, and it got behind the seat belt, and he couldn't get his head out the car, and then Taylor, that was trying to jump in, eventually got in, and when he got in scrambling, he knocked the gears into neutral on the steering wheel, so when it restarted anyway, they had an absolute. So Ricky Taylor did this amazing comeback drive, then scythes the pack to get back to the lead, and with 2 laps to go, made a move on. I don't know if it was Tandy, I don't know who was driving the lead Porsche at that time, and stuck it in the wall. So they didn't make the comeback, got right up to the front of the pack and went off. So ended up with a BMW was second. Nick Yolali, one of the team, the British driver, was second in the lead BMW. So it's a good run for BMW. And then there was another Porsche that came third. So good weekend. So, 2 Porsches on the podium.
So you said about Porsche selling cars. So like back in your day with Richard Lloyd,
962, yeah.
But so how do other manufacturers do that as well? So you can if you
I believe so. Cadillac, I think, are going to sell. Yeah, I think all the other LMDHs are going to sell cars. LMH. The sort of factory-built cars, I'm not sure they'll ever be for sale because they're so complicated. I think a private team can run them. It's so complex.
Yeah.
We also had great news for British drivers in the GTE class, GTAMs as they call it, because Jack Hawksworth and Ben Barnicoat, a pair of really good, talented British drivers, earning their money over in America. They won the GT class in their Lexus RCF. So it was a pretty good weekend for Brits over at Long Beach in the sports car race.
It's nice.
And then the next day, IndyCar.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was IMSA and then there was IndyCar as well.
Yeah.
Both at
fantastic weekend spectating. Yes, brilliant week. I've been out there filming with Lord Drayson when he was racing the GT car. So great weekend. And it was the IndyCar race wasn't the closest at the end. They were quite all drawn out. The first 3 were just running in together, but nobody was really doing anything. There was a bit of drama. Pato O'Ward was the headline maker because first of all, he took out Scott Dixon, dived up the inside, really late lunch. And again, the rule makers said because at the apex they were wheel to wheel. So they said that's a racing incident. It's a street course, you can't go too much.
It's just ridiculous.
And Scott was already turned in when Pato was already half a car still behind him. So it was only as Scott got to the apex did Pato arrive by then wheel to wheel.
The laws aren't black and white like that. It's not a case of if you're level, because then you can't.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to sit back and say, no, that was a stupid late lunge. Yeah. You're out. But no, absolutely. You can't do that because they made a wheel to wheel rule. In fact, we made a right mess because later on he took out Kyle Kirkwood, who went on to win. We'll talk about him in a minute. But he took himself out. He made another lunge at the same corner, then hit the brakes to bottle out of it because it was too late and put it. So Ward had a bad weekend. But yeah, this Kyle Kirkwood has finally come good. Pole position, won the race. Really, really talented. We were talking about a 24-year-old. He was this big sensation because he did this. They have this road to Indy, which is such a good structure over there where they sponsor, give some money to the winner of the junior formula to move up to the middle formula to move up to the Indy lights. So Kyle Kirkwood, he won Formula 4, Formula 3, US Formula 2000, and Indy Pro 2000. So he won 5 championships from probably age 15.
Wow.
Just kept on winning. And then he dominated the Indy Lights in 2021. He won 10 of the 20 races. So he then won that scholarship. Didn't have enough sponsorship to go for a top team. Then AJ Foyt, who's a sort of mid-pack car, took him over for the money he had and what sponsor they could get. And he had a pretty disappointing year. He said everything went wrong. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And he had a couple of moments of talent, but had a pretty miserable season by his standards. He's now found a berth with the Andretti Motorsport team. And he just had this spectacular weekend. Pole position, led away.
Maybe he's just found his form there as well.
Just got in a good car.
Because clearly he's a phenomenal driver. If you don't win all those championships by chance.
No. So we've been waiting. He could maybe be a Formula One driver. If Andretti are allowed to get into Formula One by this miserable poker teams that won't let anybody in.
You've got to get with the times. I mean, get 2 more teams in at least.
I know. Exactly. But poor old Roman Grosjean wasn't too pleased because he's his teammate and he finished second. So Grosjean, another fantastic. He's going to win soon. Because he looked like he was going to win in St. Petersburg. They had that clash with whoever came out the pits. And so Grosjean, another good run for him. Marcus Ericsson came third. So by the end, those 3 were sort of spaced apart. There was no big drama at the end. They were all a bit running out of fuel, I think, because that session went on for too long, no yellows. So not the most spectacular finish, but a fantastic story of the name you all remember. Kyle Kirkwood. Kyle Kirkwood.
Kirkwood. You heard it here first. I know what was spectacular. If have you finished there? Because can we go to MotoGP now? Because that was
that's we have to stay in the USA.
In the USA, to the Circuit of Americas. And it was it's always action, even from practice with MotoGP, isn't it? It was.
They had a sprint race again. They still look a bit silly. I said this last week when I was previewing the race.
Circuit, the small bike.
I know. when you got a wide track and wide tarmac runoffs on both sides of a wide track, they look like little tiny things going through. But they had a lovely 10-lap sprint race. So in a MotoGP, when they have a sprint races, those boys sprint. They don't muck about. They just go for every corner, every lunge, every lap. Bagnaia, the reigning championship, Francesco Bagnaia, from pole position, sort of had the race pretty much under control out front. And they were very, very close. But the sort of star of the race was Alex Rins, who lost a ride last year when Suzuki withdrew. But he's picked up a ride in one of the Honda satellite teams, the Italian LCR team. Because Honda's the sort of down in the dumps, Marc Marquez was the sort of crashed in Portimao, desperately trying to keep his Honda up with the Ducatis and all the rest of the field. So the Honda had been rubbish, and all of a sudden there's Alex Rins, bit of a specialist. He won at Cota before, hanging on to Bagnaia right the way to the finish. Not even a challenger, but hanging on. Fabio Quartararo was one of the few that dropped it, desperately trying to get his season track. His Yamaha doesn't seem to be on pace, so he had a bad sprint race. And then Alex Marquez, who was, what's he? He's in a Ducati, isn't he? He's a satellite Ducati. Anyway, Marquez. I'm not sure I should tell you this, or even have our listeners listen to it. But coming down at 200 miles an hour, braking for turn 12, Cota's back straight, having not felt very well at the start of the race, he vomited into his helmet during braking from 200 miles an hour and ended up dropping the bike and retiring. So, reason for retirement: not feeling very well.
Vomit in helmet.
Vomit in helmet whilst doing probably 150 miles an hour hard on the brakes into them.
So I wonder if it went all over his bike.
Oh
as well.
no, I don't want to talk about it. I didn't know. I didn't even want to tell you. I nearly took it out. Of the news. And let's move quickly on to the main race the next day. Again, it was Bagnaia made the start from pole with Rins chasing him as hard as he could. And we went back to the old Bagnaia, old Ducati, and whilst leading seemingly on the pace, going through the turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 opening sector at Kota, I think it was only about turn 4 or 5, the front folded under him and down he went, sliding off at 100, very high speed slide off, and dumped the Ducati firmly in the catty-water. And this is what happened several times last year before he made the amazing comeback. And again, he, as last year, he just says, I was doing the same thing. I was the same throttle, I was the same line, and I can't understand it. How did it happen? And he said this a lot last year, and obviously Ducati have to look at all the details and the post-max. But in the final, they were going down like skittles. About, I think 9 riders retired out of the field. I don't know how many it was, 23 or 4 or 5. 9 went. I don't know if they all retired from dropping it, but they were going down like skittles. I've never seen so many bikes. But I still notice, we keep on talking every time we talk about this MotoGP. It's a bit like when Bagnaia fell off. It's a bit like Verstappen leading Hamilton through those corners and spinning off. I mean, it would just never happen in a Formula 1 car because the edge is not on a knife. It just says on a bike.
Yeah,
how edgy you are. And you just step over by a mile an hour.
But you say that, but Max has done that a couple of times.
Well, a couple of times, yeah, mucking about. But anyway, so that left Rins out front, and we all couldn't believe he was going to hang on. And he hung on and hung on and hung on, just kept the pace and just cruised to a victory, being chased again. It wasn't very exciting in the end. They were a bit slightly spread out the top of 3. But it was a lovely story because in second place was the Luca Marini. It was in the satellite, the VR's 46, Rossi's team in Ducati. So that was his first ever podium. So he was in tears on the podium. And then in third place, battling all the odds, was Quartararo, who just battled. He still keeps battling with that flipping Yamaha that doesn't want to go fast enough. When was your very happy podium?
When was your first podium, Tiff? Where and when?
Podium? Where? I have no idea. We didn't have podiums usually. Well, I had loads of seconds and thirds in my first year of racing. I had my first win in my second year.
You can't remember the first time you stood on the podium? And
we didn't have one.
Okay.
Only when you won. You only went on the podium when you won. It was so much simpler. I used to love it. I've got a lovely photo in my book and in everywhere. They used to have a Ford Capri at Brands Hatch with a cage on the back, like a warrior, like a stadium Roman chariot. And only the winner went on the back. And you stood there with a checkered flag and a garland, and you waved all the crowd. And they all knew who the winner was. They could see my face and take my photos. And the whole of South Bank, where the cars used to park, the horns would go, and I'd wave the flag and smile. And they gradually started adding second and third on this chariot. But then you got 3 drivers all talking to each other and, talking about the race, probably ignoring the crowd. And also the crowd couldn't tell which of the 3 was the winner because they didn't know what the faces looked like. So podiums weren't a thing of the past. It's a new thing. Nowadays, being on the podium is like winning, isn't it? And I remember a Caterham driver I was following. He was just so desperate to get on the podium. Drove me mad, to be honest. I was thinking, bother about the podium. What about winning a bloody race?
Well, actually, on Caterham this weekend, so the new media driver at Caterham only went and bloody won, didn't he? So he's shown me up already.
It's got to be easy group. It must be the green group. It must be with the easy team.
Well, I can't compare lap times because we didn't race. I think they were at Cadwell or somewhere. But but Callum, I'll be comparing lap times.
Congratulations, Callum. Yeah. That's impressive. So anyway, so it was a very happy podium. Of course, Susie Perry happy, and the whole. I mean, it's just lovely watching MotoGP. Not so good for the Brits in Moto 2 and 3 though. Sam Lowe's only qualified 18th after dropping him qualifying. Rory Skinner, the rookie, qualified 24th, which is about where he is. But Jake Dixon, our hope to be champion, qualified 6th and dumped it on the warming up lap.
What was all that about, Jake? What was?
Well, he doesn't know. He did a Bagnaia. He just said,
"It's the bike."
He went back. It's the bike. It's the bike. Went straight to his engineers and said, "We've got to look at the data until we get the bike back." Because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Something the rear end went. Maybe the rear end did go funny, but it was in turn 6, 7, 8, 9 when he sort of got a wobble on and down it went. So he didn't even start the race.
I mean, it is the most comical thing you ever see when you see a driver or a rider stack it on the warm-up lap.
Oh.
Sam
got up from 18th to 13th, and Rory, he was really happy. He got up from 24th to 19th. So he was probably, as he learns his way around GP2, because when Jake Dixon, when he first did GP2, he was right at the back, Moto 2. He was at the back, and it takes a lot of experience to get these bikes. The race was won by Pedro Acosta, who's beginning to show the form we all thought he would. The young Spaniard heading for the stars, I've no doubt. Moto 3, again, our lad Scott Ogden, there was that brilliant 5th place he had in Argentina. He apparently messed up qualifying. They have a Q2 and a Q1, and you have to get to the top 12 of Q2 to get into Q1, and he just missed out by doing a bad lap. So he qualified 23rd with Josh Watley 27th. Watley was out on the first lap. He pulled in. I don't know. I think he had a fall. He might have injured himself in a warm-up crash or something because he wasn't in his best. Scott got through the 14th, which is pretty good from 23rd, because all these kids are very, very, very equal that have, got the talent on those bikes.
Yeah, but it's the same with cars. It's a lot of it is in your mind and you just your composition.
You need good qualifying. Yeah. It was amazing how because they all go pack racing in Moto 3, and 6 was suddenly 4 seconds ahead of everybody else. The front pack. You can't see the moment it happens. I always want to go back through a race, and you'd have to see 6th and 7th to see how they suddenly lose the toe.
Yeah.
And it was a Spanish 1, 2, 3. This Moto 3 is dominated by these little tiny Spaniards. It was Ivan Otoka won. It was his first podium. Never even had a podium at wins. He never had a podium in his second year of Moto 3. But he came out the top step of his first step onto a podium. So congratulations to Ivan. So always entertaining. I mean, the bikes, the Moto 3. I mean, they were 4 abreast into the last corner almost. Well, 3 abreast. There was so much barging and pushing. The front pack of 6.
Well, let's go.
In fact, the Japanese leader, which was his name, he high-sided in front of everybody else. It was chaos, but it was always entertaining.
NASCAR?
Well, of course, we always end with NASCAR. It was in Martinsville, and it's one of these half-mile tracks. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of the half-mile circuits because they're just 2 lanes side by side.
Well, you say that, and it is, and there seems to be. Is there more argy-bargy? It just seems to be more.
Well, yeah. And early on, when the higher groove isn't rubbered in, if you start on the right-hand side, you just go back, and there's this desperation to look for a gap in the inside. The inside lane's going sort of a car's length faster every lap. So the people on the eyes are losing a car. And that's the way it goes. But anyway, and I don't really like Martinsville because my mate Carl Larson doesn't like Martinsville. He says it's just a track he can't win on because it doesn't suit his style. He says he pinched it. So anyway, well, Kyle Larson won, of course, and that made the whole race much more enjoyable to watch. He won the grandfather clock. Martinsville, you win a massive, great grandfather clock. Someone's got 5 clocks. I don't know which driver it's got 5 clocks.
The best burnout I've ever seen, and that was NASCAR.
Oh, you saw that, did you?
Yeah. So if you haven't seen NASCAR, it's a bit of a tradition. Is it? You put the car against the pit wall on the straight.
Well, there are lots of them. You have your own technique.
Okay.
You either do donut. Some drive up to the wall, as you say, and then just spin the wheels so they burst. Larson's best one. I know they banned him from doing it. My son Harry's got it on his Twitter page or somewhere, or I think it's on his highlight page. So he got the donuts going, took the steering wheel off. There's a photo of the arm out the window, the steering wheel, the arm. The car's covered in smoke. Brilliant. But Martinsville, you turn around to go the wrong way around the track. Another tradition, you go sort of past the finish line, then do a U-turn, and then you come back past the stands because you're driving on the left-hand side. So now you're next to the wall to wave. But he got a rolling burnout going. But he did the whole half-mile loop on opposite lock, spinning the tyres. I think when he got to the final corner, the inside tyre exploded and he had to hobble to the line. But they always like celebrating well in NASCAR. They don't mess about with celebrations.
It was a good burnout.
But it was a fairly drama-free race. There was no big controversies, there was a pushing and shoving going on. But in fact, Larson probably won the race because he did the last pit stop. He only took 2 tyres. This way, you can jump up the line if you only take 2 tyres instead of 4 tyres. Because, of course, they don't change 4 tyres in, what is it, 2.5 seconds? What is your record in Formula One now, in your data?
1.89,
Oh, is it 1.8?
Yeah, but
No,
it's completely
NASCAR
different.
boys
NASCAR,
take about 12 or 15 seconds.
So they just do the two tires on one side. They don't do
don't do the whole 4 tires,
Yeah.
which means you lose a little bit of grip. But you take a gamble. It can make a difference. You can have a gamble that can change your day. So yes, so much motorsport going on, all overshadowed by Craig. So we remember the loss of Craig this weekend, despite so much motorsport going on.
Yeah, well, we love this little podcast, and we love doing it. And at Goodwood, quite a few people came up to me and said, "Thanks for the podcast, really enjoy it." And which I was quite surprised at because I don't know,
Nobody comments.
We don't
Nobody
seem
comments.
to get many listeners or viewers.
We don't know.
And also at Bristol Audi, a lad called Chris came up to me and said, "Oh, I love the podcast." He said it's like Autosport magazine, but as a podcast. So he said it's brilliant to get my.
Well, you look at somebody's. There's about a dozen Formula One podcasts. They get 150,000, but it's all Formula One. Formula One. We're a proper worldwide motorsport. We appreciate the world and love cars.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us always. Congratulations to
this
Callum.
Weekend. Got to do this weekend before you finish off because there's loads this weekend. World Rally, as we said, Saturday in Croatia, the World Rally Championship, World Superbikes in Assen in Holland, Formula E, Berlin, Saturday and Sunday, a double header. A Super Formula, the Japanese in Japan, where we catch up with Liam Lawson to see if he can beat off all the Japanese. NASCAR, of course. Talladega, baby. We're going from a half a mile of bumping and boring at 100 miles an hour to 2 miles bumping and boring at 200 miles an hour. That's a fairly long pedestrian wait for a massive crash every week. But best of all for Britain, BTCC, we're back, Donington. So Donington, the place, Sunday afternoon, that fabulous TV coverage they give for British touring cars when you get all the single seaters, Formula 4s, Formula 4, just Formula 4s in there, no GT, no Formula 3s. Anyway,
you're rubbish with names. I'm rubbish with corners. What's the one down the hill at Donington? The Craners?
Craner Curves.
Craner Curves. Yeah, that's going to be carnage on the first lap, isn't it, with the BTCC boys? Thanks for joining. Our respects to Craig Breen, and see you next week.
Cheers.